What we need to do now is learn how to add on the abacus. Now this is different than counting. With counting, we started in with zero, the way that we have here, and we went through the beads one at a time to count in the quantities. And when we maxed out a group, then we turned it in for the next higher group. We don't want to do that with addition, because addition needs to be more efficient than counting our way through things. So we're going to start with putting the first number into the abacus just as we read it. So 471, we put in 4 hundreds, 7 tens, 1 1. So we have our 471, and we want to add 526. Now the nice thing about an abacus is that you can add from left to right or right to left, and the result will come out the same because of the regrouping processes. But since most people are used to counting or adding from right to left, I'm going to do that for this example. So all I want to do is just add in the place values from right to left. So first I want to add 6. So I add 5 and 1, that's 6. I want to add 2 tens. So I go to the tens place and I add 2 tens. And I want to add 5 hundreds. So I go to the hundreds place and I add 5 hundreds. And when we're done, then we have the answer. We just read it off and we see that the answer is 997. Now this was an easy introductory problem. It did not involve any regrouping. So the next problem we'll try is with regrouping. So now we want to add 378 and 145. And we'll see that this involves some maxing out and not borrowing, but carrying across to get the addition answer correct. So we start with showing our 378. And I'm going to add from right to left, and you can see how the carrying goes. So I want to add 5 ones to my 8 ones that are already there. So I bring down a 5, and I see that I have maxed out my top 2 beads. So I turn those 2 beads in for 110. That's 2 5s being turned in for 110. And that's what we needed to do to add 5 ones. Next, we need to add 4 tens. Now, there are different ways that you can approach this. You can do similar to what we did in the counting. You can say, well, there's 1, 2 of my 4, and I've maxed out this row, so I turn those in for one of the 5s up there. And I've maxed those out, so I turn those in for 1 bead of the next column over. That was adding 2 of them, and I need to add 2 more, so there we have it. That's adding the 4 in that manner. And then we need to add 100. So I add 100 and I max out those 5 and I turn them in for 1 5, and I see that the answer is 523. There's another way you can handle it. So I'm going to reset back to 378. I'm going to add my 5 ones. There's my 5 ones, turn those in for 110. Now, I want to add 4 tens. A different way of doing that is to recognize that 4 tens, adding in 4 tens, is the same as adding in 5 tens and taking away 1 10. That gives you a net of adding 4 tens. So I add in 5 tens and I take away one of those tens. Now I've added in 4. And I see that I've maxed those out, so I turn them in for one of the hundreds. So that's an interesting way of thinking about it, and you need to understand this and you need to practice it so that you're not always counting up to 4, especially when whatever place value you're adding to, if it's close to being maxed out, there's no point in trying to add in, say, 7 to it, and a big number, and starting to spend all your time flipping through all of the beads. So I'm going to, well, then I'll finish up. So there's 100, max out, turn in for the 500, and I get the 523. There's another way of adding in the 4 tens. So we will start back with our 378. I add in my 5 ones. I max out and turn those in. Well, now I want to add the 4 tens. One thing that I can do with that is recognize that adding 4 is the same as subtracting 10, I'm sorry, let me say that again, is the same as adding 10 and taking away 6. So if I want to add 4, I add 10 of those 10 beads and I take away 6 of those beads. That's added in the 4. And then I add my 100 and turn it in for that, and I get my same result of 523. And I could have done that at the very beginning when I was adding in my 5 ones. I could have said, look, I want to add in 5 ones. Instead of pushing down that 5 bead, I could say I'm adding 10 ones and subtracting away 5 ones. And then I could say I'm adding 10 tens and subtracting away 6 tens. And then I add 100 and turn those in for the 5, and I get the same answer of 523.